If you're tired of inconsistent income and are ready to build a six-figure personal styling business with clarity and confidence, the Income Accelerator program is now accepting applications. This unique hybrid program combines one-to-one coaching and feedback from me with weekly group calls, giving you tailored support and a collaborative community of other stylists at your level, unlike anything else out there for established personal stylists. There are only 7 spots available this round, so you are not going to want to wait to submit your application. And if you apply before February 14th, you'll get an exclusive bonus strategy call with me to focus on exactly what you need to maximize your results in the program. Ready to transform your styling business? Head to the show notes for the application and more information. Let's make this your most profitable year yet. Welcome to the Six Figure Personal Stylist Podcast, the ultimate no BS business podcast for ambitious personal stylists ready to build a six-figure and beyond personal styling business. You won't hear the typical snooze fest business advice that most personal stylists get told all of the time. Nope, instead I'll be sharing business building strategies that will help you create a killer personal brand, a cult following of loyal personal styling clients, and make a ton of cash while creating lasting style transformations for your clients. I'm Nicole Achi, your host and a former personal stylist of 14 years who built a lucrative styling business in 3 major cities, but only after spending years trying to crack the six-figure styling business code without burning out. And now I'm here to tell you how to do exactly the same. Let's get into it. Today, we are diving into an inspiring story of transformation with my client, Brigitta Catinean, a personal stylist based in Canada. 2 years into her business, Brigitta hit a turning point. She was spinning her wheels, unsure about her audience, her pricing, her services, and just feeling stuck. In this episode, Brigitta shares the pivotal shifts that changed everything for her, overcoming self-doubt and supercharging her marketing, realizing that her audience was ready to buy, and embracing sales calls to skyrocket her confidence in her sales. If you ever wonder how my clients achieve 6 figures and build thriving businesses, you do not want to miss this episode. We're breaking it all down and getting into the nitty-gritty. I think you will have a lot in common with Brigitta. Let's dive in. Tell us a little bit about how long you've been a stylist and sort of where you're coming from professionally into styling.
I've been a stylist officially for almost 2 years. And prior to that, I have a direct sales background. So I was an account manager, mostly for tech companies. And I did that just about right out of school. Very customer service focused background, very worked in really big teams and worked with really big teams. And I was always the liaison between the client and the company. So it was really interesting. And I love working with people. And I noticed that I missed that connection with women because it was a very male dominant industry. And the older I got, I realized that I'm such a girl's girl. And I love pretty things. And I also, I would look around at any kind of convention or our really big kickoffs. We had thousands of people. And what I noticed, there was a few women who really owned it, but a lot of them were just kind of in the background. And I was like, why is that? How do we change this? And so I've always been an introvert. So my clothes always did the talking for me. And I've always really loved fashion growing up. So getting into doing something like this, I almost want to say was my inner 10-year-old is thrilled because I always thought I was going to be in fashion design or something like that. So yeah, a very, very roundabout way of getting into styling.
So you came to me around 2 years in, and what were sort of some of the things you were thinking about in your business that had you thinking maybe it was time for a change?
I didn't have any formal training. I've never apprenticed or shadowed a stylist or even worked with one. And so I'm a very trial and error driven person. That's just how I roll. I leap first and think second. And so I really felt like I just had this growing offer ecosystem and none of it made sense. And so I would get an idea and I was like, oh, I'm going to develop this and I'm going to try and sell it. And that was like really difficult because I was constantly trying to sell something new. And I didn't have like full on confidence in my offers unless I sold one for like very cheap. If I was like, hey, this thing is, $100, I could talk about it all day long because I was like, I know I can deliver on that value. I was like, I've got zero worries of me being able to like not let somebody down. And I just felt like maybe I was playing small. I knew that what I was charging for my services and even for my signature service, like I did the math and I was like, there's no way that if I keep going with this, I'm going to hit like any kind of revenue goal that's going to keep me in business. That's not going to get me going back to like corporate and like finding a job. It's like I've got to figure out like what's going on with my marketing. I was like, is there a messaging problem? I don't know if I really understand my ideal client. And I wasn't confident in my services. I was like, am I doing everything that a stylist is supposed to be doing? Like, yes, I know I can get clients results, but it didn't feel like it was a consistent result. And so I was like, okay, I know that some of that is me and I know that some of that is like the clients that are coming in, but I didn't know, like I couldn't like pinpoint it. And I found myself spinning my wheels and I found myself hiring, like I've hired coaches and I've worked with a lot of professionals because like I said, like I don't wait. I was like, this person sounds like they can like figure it out. And so I worked with copywriters, I worked with business coaches, and I still felt like things got more clear, but I still felt like I was spinning my wheels. So that's why I came to you. I listen to your podcast religiously. So every Thursday it comes out, and your podcasts were getting like more and more spot on to the experiences that I was having. And when you started talking about the client experience, I was like, okay, I want to pay attention to this because I feel like this is the area that I want to work on.
First of all, thank you so much for all of your honesty and sort of forthrightness, because these are the honest conversations that I think we're having with ourselves behind the scenes. And so we don't often hear, even I think maybe on this podcast, people don't always say like, oh yeah, this is what I was doing and this is what I was thinking. And I think it's so valuable because we tend to think that we're not being like an expert or something if we have these like questions in our mind, but only experts ask questions like this. People that are truly like amateur hour don't say like, I think there might be a gap in my knowledge. And yet so many stylists like criticize themselves and hold themselves back from getting this like a little bit of information that they need and sort of figuring it out. I think because they're afraid to find out that maybe they are an imposter or that this isn't. And so you sharing that I think is going to be so helpful for people to just identify like, oh, that's not a sign of like me not being good at this. It's actually the opposite. So I appreciate that. You've done a lot of other things. You sort of worked with some other coaches and stuff. When you decided to reach out to me and we had a conversation about this was a good fit, this program, were there hesitations like, all right, I've already worked with coaches. Like what is this possibly going to give me?
A little bit of that was like, okay, if I'm not getting results from other people, I know that like some of that is with me. And I know that you talk about it too, but I honestly think that my hesitation and like not doing it earlier, I was like, that's a big investment. I told myself, I was like, I'm not going to invest in anything that is more than I can make back up in one service. I was like, straight up, that's going to be a guideline that I'm going to follow. And I think some of my hesitation was honestly ego. It was what can somebody offer me who's only worked in fashion, or like in styling, who only has like one lens, right? I was like, I want to do things differently. I want to do all these things, but I don't know. I had this, something was holding me back. And I think like the ego was like, oh, you're not, you're going to get like fluffy surface level stuff. But I think at the same time, it was that like playing small. It was like, okay, somebody's going to like come in and actually like know what this is supposed to look like or what this can look like. And they're going to look at your services and they're going to look at the way that like you're doing your haphazard marketing. And she's going to be like, what are you doing? So I thought like, almost like a sour grapes thing, even without like reaching out. And I know that's a way that we protect. And at the same time, I was like, oh my God, I'm going to be exposed.
Thank you so much for saying that. I cannot tell you how much I know, but can never say that that is people's fear. And I think a lot of it is because stylists have a unique situation where they start their business pretty much. Are there people that go to school? Sure. It's more common, but most people don't go to school for this. Most people don't know another stylist, or they only follow them on social media. And so there's this fear because we don't experience ourselves professionally in like an education setting. There is this fear of like almost like in the corporate world, like I don't want to look stupid, I don't want to look called out. But what people forget, and like what, is that like that's exactly what these containers are for, not to be called out, but to get the education that was missing. And that I would never have been able to launch my career if I wasn't in rooms like this. And so instead of it being, I just so appreciate you sharing that, because it is absolutely the thing, again, nobody says. And so people are going to feel so like seen by this conversation, I think, because we honestly often don't even know that like we're trying to protect ourselves. So the fact that you had that awareness is, I think, obviously what got you to the next level. So when you were like, okay, fine, I'm sick of having 9,000 different services. One thing you were always good at, though, is you were always good at your marketing. So you've always been very consistent in your marketing. Share a little bit about sort of how you were looking at your marketing and how you were going at it.
It was very response-based. I've tried to create content plans. I've tried. And it's not something that works for me. And so it feels haphazard because it's very energy-based, right? And like it doesn't feel consistent because my energy is not consistent. And so I know that I had phases when the more content that you create, the more comfortable you are with it. And then when I fall off, I know that I'm awkward in front of the camera. And then the algorithm changed. And so I wasn't getting the kind of like reach and response that I got when I first got going a year ago. And I was like, oh, like maybe it felt haphazard because I felt like maybe I lost touch. It was like, maybe I don't know how to make myself relevant. Like what I'm saying is not resonating with people. I'm just like not getting the kind of like response on social media that I'm hoping for when I talk about something. And so I never knew like how to show up on social media, on the feed, in a way that is congruent with what I was trying to accomplish in my business. In a nutshell, I think I like started around that. But essentially it was like, I really want it to be like holistic and consistent and all those like really good things. But essentially I was like, I want my marketing to line up with what I'm trying to do. I was like, I have no idea how to do that. I would have client conversations and they would give me a really cool idea. And I was like, amazing, I'm going to turn that into content. Or like I would read something and same kind of thing. But it was very it was very external. So I was just like creating content in response versus like really aligning it with goals because I didn't know how to do that.
You didn't know, right? Okay, so then you get in the program, you get past your resistance. We start. What do you think the biggest things were that surprised you and that you started to see results with first?
I think first was relating the client experiences and all the client research that I've done back to my business and like what those mean and what I can do with that.
So you had the information, you just didn't know how to apply it. Is that what I'm hearing?
Yeah. I had the information for the most part. And then you had us ask some really, really pointed questions. And so I got back in touch with some clients that I haven't done research with. And I was able to ask them like very, very specific questions to where I was like, yeah, like I want to know this. This is really good. And I felt like I didn't even know like the right questions to ask that were very industry specific because I would go off of like brand strategy research and things like that. And they were really good at getting to know somebody's like mindset and worldview, but not necessarily in a manner that pertains to like my niche and what I'm doing. And so having that first module be about like the client experience and what their challenges are was really, really eye-opening. And I was like, okay, I can see how everything I have, I can turn into something like useful and tangible. That was the first one. And then the second one was you going through the offering and the way that you talked about all the pieces that go into a styling service. I think that was, it just gave me peace of mind. I remember like gardening and listening to that. And I was like, this is so good. And it really, really got me thinking. Like I was doing the things, but I was like unsure why and like where they all fit in. And something like I've always done like some sort of a style discovery, but it wasn't like a formal process. And I was like, oh my God, this is crazy that I haven't like figured out that I needed to do this in like a very formalized way, because all the clients who I've worked with who we've done that with, they were like, oh my God, like I understand myself. Like I finally know why I don't look like my Pinterest. Like this has been just like eating away at me. And like even before the program, I did that with someone and she was like so thrilled. And so yeah, knowing like everything that's supposed to be part of the service. And when I say supposed to be, like the guidelines that you gave that have worked for you and have worked for other stylists, I was like, I'm like taking everything that I need and leaving everything I don't.
One of the things about your services is they're really unique, and we didn't make them less unique. I think one of the fears that people have is that, like, one of my biggest fears, honestly, is that everybody leaves my program with the same services. Like, there's nothing worse to me for this industry than that. So my goal here is to make a framework, but that had enough looseness to it that it was like giving you guys best practices to get the client the result. Because what you said just now is really important. Like style discovery isn't just about you. And for sure, it's definitely about you being able to do your service better as a stylist and get that repeat client to come back, but also for the person to be fully bought in so that they're a better client, right? Like it's both ways. And it just makes you look like such a pro. One thing I liked about the way you handled it was like, you were like, I'm still going to have my unique services. I'm just going to put in the things that work for me. And so you didn't leave with services that looked like everybody else's. They look like yours, but better. And they look like yours with more clarity on why each part of that service is there. Did you feel like you had to retool everything, or did it feel like, okay, I have a good base here? How did like looking at the services through that lens, once you realized, oh, there's some stuff here that maybe needs to be tweaked? How did that occur?
It was very organic. I ended up adding another call to my Calendly in, as far as the client is concerned. Yeah. So that, the actual rejigging of the service was fairly low lift. What did feel, I wouldn't say high lift, but what was a lift for me was customizing like onboarding and offboarding, because that's something that I didn't have. So I was like, oh, like this is amazing, because I know how great like having an onboarding process is. And so I would do this with clients in person. And it honestly felt like such a waste of time. I was like, I'm spending time with them and I'm not getting them results. Like I'm just telling them stuff. And creating that in just like its own document that like lives on its own and like interacts with the client without me really having to do anything like other than once and like putting their name on it. That was, I just felt like, honestly, I got those done. And as soon as I like sent them off to the clients I signed, I was like, I now feel like I'm offering a 5-star service. Like I now feel like this is worth me increasing my prices. And it just like, it really took care of a lot of like imposter syndrome, because I'm like, when I look at something that I consider a 5-star service, like it has all these amazing elements that are like very, very client centric. And I was missing that. And without that, increasing my prices like didn't feel like a no-brainer to me. And I always wanted to feel like a no-brainer, because that's like going back to me marketing it like it's $100 or it's 10,000, like whatever. I really want to believe in it. And it helped me do that. I don't know if that was your question, but that's what I thought.
No, it is. Interesting. I was actually, my next question was, how did it feel to raise your prices? And it always feels nerve-wracking, right? Like, I don't expect you to be like, it felt like I won the lottery. Like, no, it's the first time you have to say the prices. The first time you have to do that can feel hard. But you actually answered the question, which was like, well, I understand why. So it feels like it's worth the value. Doesn't mean you're not nervous. Those are two different things. Like, you may or may not be. But having what she was referring to there was, there's like onboarding and offboarding guides included that are templates you can customize. And I have an education section around systems and process and how you get a client result and make something feel very luxurious and expensive. So that's what she's referring to there. But when you did, obviously we kind of very delayed, you raised your prices in the program. What do you think the elements of this program were that helped you, besides that, like get to a point where you felt really pro? It sounds like definitely the onboarding and offboarding, understanding why things are the way they are. Share a little bit about what you realized about your marketing during our work together.
Oh, we don't have enough time.
Because there's so much. No, it's fine. There was so much. You came in basically saying, I don't think I have the right audience. And what did we learn?
Oh, that they are there, and they are paying more attention than I thought. Yeah, I thought it was, I was like, oh, maybe they've just like hit snooze on my content. And that is very much not the case. I just, like as I thought, I wasn't really speaking to them in a way that made them feel understood. I'm definitely still working on that, but at least I know what I'm working on with the audience piece. Just being really clear that I'm on the right track with the audience that I'm trying to target, because I did decide to niche kind of in like the spring, summer. And I wasn't really sure what I was doing with that, other than like me deciding that this is who I'm for. And so again, like that felt really shaky. And so being able to go through like your marketing plan and just really flush out like things that I want to talk about and how I can relate them back to that person who I'm speaking to was really, really interesting, and gave me a lot of content ideas that I could feel like proud of. That I was like, I'm going to put this out, and if I get 4 likes on it, like I'm just happy that it's out there, because I know that eventually somebody is going to go through my feed and they're going to find this, and I want them to hear it. So it helped me reframe my content, because I know that I'm not like necessarily creating content for growth. Like I am creating it for conversion, because the eyeballs are there, but they're just waiting for me to see them and for me to say that, like, this is what you're running into. Like, this is what you're experiencing, and you're feeling a certain way. And this is how I can help you feel better, navigate this easier. So your process to really understanding like what somebody goes through from the moment they realize that like something's off to the moment where they would actually hire a stylist or hire me. There was a lot happening there. And I think that I was focusing at the very early stages of like the belief system of, somebody decides that they just like don't know where to shop. Like they're just at a loss and they have no idea where to start. And I think that I was talking to that person a lot more than to the person who's like, okay, I want the outside to match the inside. Like, what do I do? How do I accomplish this? And I think just because of so much of the content that I see out there is geared to a person at kind of like the beginning stages of like pain points and things like that, that I was doing the same thing, like not really realizing that like, okay, there are multiple points where if I speak to somebody who's like me, tried a bunch of stuff and didn't get results out of it, and this is what they're kind of like thinking, they'll feel a lot more heard. And so when I'm working with clients, I'm really, really focusing on those like little moments of, okay, like what are they saying to me and where they at, as opposed to kind of like, and I'm able to speak to like one person, as opposed to being like, okay, like I'm speaking to a crowd and I hope that like everybody in the crowd gets it, which we never will.
I think what you're pointing to is something that it's easy to teach people how to get likes. It's harder to teach people how to think about content to get sales. Yeah. And so you don't see a ton of it. It happens. And the people that are really, really good at sales are presenting it. But most people don't want to have to do the level of thinking that you have to do to get good sales content and to also potentially get the ego. Because the thing about sales content is, you said, is you might only get 4 likes, but you will probably make $4,000. Because people are not like, ooh, that was sales content. Let me raise my hand in the comments and tell you how much I loved it. But they will get on a sales call. And so you will start to just see this connection with time, but it won't necessarily look like a billion likes. What we learned, though, from you is that you ended up having a challenge that was planned during the period that we were working together. Anyways, it was already up and going before we started. And you came into the program saying, like, I'm not sure if these people are here. You have a relatively good sized audience. I mean, in the thousands, couple thousand. How many do you have followers around on Instagram?
30,000.
30,000. Yeah, you have a huge audience. And we weren't sure if your audience was there, which logically that's not possible, that there's 30,000 people and nobody is a buyer. Like, that's not. But also it's not possible with 1,000 people either. So you were like, okay, I'm going to do a challenge. Now, that it was not a paid challenge. It was a free challenge, but it doesn't matter. People had to raise their hand to give their time. And how many people did you get on that after we used activation content to get people on the list?
Something like 130.
So from thinking that like nobody's listening because there's not this back and forth, to 130 people raising their hand to spend like a week with you.
Yeah.
Right away, we know. Okay. And having those like mechanisms to be able to do that is really powerful, to your point. What were your biggest mindset shifts in your business as a result of this? Because, you clearly got a lot out of it, but how are the ways you look at your business differently?
I feel like this is a mindset shift, but I look at it in a much more like simple and straightforward manner. Now there is kind of like a single entry point. And that being like, you want to work with me, here's a signature service. And that's something that like now is like highlighted on my website. And just knowing that like if somebody comes into my world, if I want to get them results, then they're going to go through this experience with me. Versus I struggled when like somebody new would follow me, or like when somebody would literally at an event be like, so what do you do? How do you work? I like struggled with that answer. I was like, I don't know, it depends. Right? Like, oh, I check my highlights.
I don't know what I'm selling this week, but let me get back to you on that. If you do billion services. Yeah, no.
It's super complicated. Like, I don't want to walk into a store and be like, peruse all the shelves. Like, I just want to find the thing, unless I'm shopping. Now I'm able to like a lot more clearly explain to somebody like how I work, because where I live and in the circles that like I'm in, a stylist is still very much something that's unknown, which is, I find that a great thing. and people don't really understand. Like they still think that like, oh, so like you're a personal shopper. And now I'm able to like really articulate of like, I'm not, but I can be after like a while, and like after I help you get to know yourself. And so that's honestly like made me sleep easier at night. Just knowing that like I've got one service that I'm going to be like focusing on and marketing, and everything else, like all my shiny new ideas are going to be geared towards an existing client.
To be clear, you have more than one offer, but we focus your work there. That everybody has a different business model that leads this program. But to be clear, what you were really looking for was that clarity and that simplicity to feel like more of an expert. And the fact that you felt like all of the parts of the service were clear, you made it clear that that's the way you wanted to go forward with your offer. And I think, do you still have the urge though to create a million offers? Is that way of being still winging in?
On one right now, but it's something that like doesn't really involve me. It involves creating a guide and letting it loose for a week. Yeah, other than that, I was like, well, it's Black Friday and I've had this thing done, so I might as well. Yeah, I feel like I'm excited to give it a go. But other than that, no. Like I feel like I have a marketing calendar from you. That was another thing that kind of felt like a hurdle. I was like, I don't know what I need to be focusing on what time of year, because only having been like in 2 years of the business, and the 2 years look so different in terms of busy times, I didn't really know when to focus on what. And so again, I was like, that's a lot of like energy spent like not knowing. So now I have that like, okay, well now it's, middle of November, end of November, I know what I'm doing. In December, I'm going to know what I'm doing. So that was also like a mindset shift of like, okay, I've always looked at this as a business, but I feel like I'm looking at it even more so as a business. Like there's a lot more like financial planning in like my day-to-day. And now I can kind of like look ahead and plan a little bit more internally. I can like plan my income. I can, I can plan it, but I still like can't predict it. But I would like to get to a point where I have that like expertise. But I feel like you've given me another 2 years of experience minimum.
In 6 weeks. We literally just finished the program. For the record, she's saying that we have not even hit the 1 month point of her being out of the program, to be fair. So we are literally fresh out. And you feel like it was like a 2 years of like just experience, just added on in 6 weeks. Yeah.
Yeah, like you compress time for me, right?
Sure.
And what I would have just like trialed and errored over and over for like the next 2 years, I feel like we figured out. And like when I'm saying next 2 years, I feel like I'm probably being like underestimating that.
So we have an idea of what you're selling. How do you feel about the sales skills part of it, which was I know like a big part of the program when we talked about. Can you share a little bit about your thoughts on that?
Ooh, yes. Another mindset shift.
Yeah.
Was getting on sales calls. That was major for me. Again, and it was an ego thing because there's so much content out there that labels sales calls as something that like they're wasting time. At the beginning stages, I would just get people booking my service. Like I would get somebody book a $1,500 service without like ever like talking to me, like maybe commenting on some content, but that was it. They would book it and they were like, I was hoping that you would show up. And it was great when like those clients were aligned, but I wanted like I said at the beginning to have more control of like who I worked with and just to make sure that it's a right fit, that they're like spending their money in at the right time, like, and they're not doing something that I did because I hate spending the right money at the wrong time. So getting on sales calls is something that I've been doing. I think I've had like 3 sales calls and like all 3 of them were successful. And like
Since the program
and like even like during the program. And
so you made your money back for sure.
yeah. No, it's like it's fantastic. And so getting on sales calls, but knowing like what to do before the sales call, knowing what to do during the sales call, like how to like empathize with somebody, how to really understand like why they're reaching out has been amazing. Like, mind you, one of those sales calls was with a former client who signed up for like a mini service, and she came back. She was like, "I think I want something bigger," and I was like, "Great, let's chat about it." And I don't think that I would have had like the courage to like upgrade her to the signature service. I was like, great, like you and I have had like a mini service last year and we were going to do another mini service because I felt like she has great style and she knows how to shop for herself. And turns out she's at this like turning point in her career and education and everything. And so she signed up for the signature offer, which is amazing because that is someone that I'm like dying to work with closely one-on-one. And I've had like 2 other people. One of them is like kind of like basically put up her hand when I put up a piece of content, when I was like, this is what I'm doing for a client. She was like, I am interested in that. And so again, like we had a sales call and I would have not done that before. Like I posted about like a small service that I was doing with an ongoing client. And if I didn't have like the sales call skills and all the tools from you, I would have probably just been like, yeah, here's that mini service that I did. Even though that was like linked in the story that she put up her hand for. I had a sales call with her and she didn't sign up for the signature offer, but she signed up for like the tier below. And um and that feels like a huge win because again, like I would have probably tried to place her into something smaller. And as soon as we got talking, I was like, yeah, I don't think that would have gotten her the results that she's looking for.
That is an incredible story. It's the difference between like having sales scripts and having sales skills. If you had a sales script, you would have sold her the thing that she thought she wanted, but didn't know any better about. If you have sales skills, you can sell people into the thing that they actually need and want. And then you have longer term clients, which is what I think people don't realize about sales skills, or like even what you said about the calls. Thank you for sharing that, because it really has become like it's low status instead of it being a way to take care of people. instead of it being an extension of being a high-end service provider, it has become in the online space this idea of like beneath people, when like honestly it should be beneath you to take crappy clients that you've not like qualified, like for everybody's sake, for the ethics of it. So thank you for sharing that. That's incredible. Last question I want to ask you, because I know this program has a group element and a one-to-one element. It's a little bit unique in that way. What are your thoughts on people that are a little like, oh, I'm not sure about a group program, I'd prefer one-to-one, or like what were your kind of thoughts on the way that those elements mixed together in the container?
Having both taken like group and one-on-one, I thought that I was like, I'm a one-on-one person from now on.
Yeah.
But you were able to really tailor a group program along with the one-on-one like Voxer container into something that felt like very customized to me. The way that you put together the program had all the great group elements that I want. So I want to hear what other people are running into, right? I want them to ask the questions that I can't think of, but I want to hear the answer to. So for me, on the group calls, I was like, that's super helpful. And then second, I really loved how you had an individual element with the action plans.
Yeah.
Because to me, that really felt like one-on-one. And then on top of that, like I had like access to you via Voxer, which I was like, oh my God, this is amazing. Right? It's like I want more of that for the rest of my life. And so just like having that action plan was, yeah, like that's how I look at one-on-one. I'm like, I want your eyeballs on the things that I'm working on. And that's exactly what you were able to do. So yeah, it felt like one-on-one and then some with the group. So it actually felt like an upgrade from a one-on-one service. I'm really, really glad that I did it. And it was also like a little bit more of like a low pressure way. I was like, okay, if I'm going to get called out on shit, I'm sure other people are going to get called out too.
Okay, but to be fair, I don't feel like that was the vibe. If I called you out, it was about something good, usually.
Yeah. Yeah. And it was such a positive experience. Like oh my gosh, you have such a real and a positive way of like giving feedback and of acknowledging people and seeing people. I thought that was so cool. And it was so, yeah, I felt like encouraged, and I was like, oh my God, yeah, like I do need to slow down. Like I do need to give myself credit. And so, yeah, I was like, oh, that's such a cool part of it, that you're able to like really, and like even on the group calls, just like pay attention to everyone and like meet everybody exactly where they're at, because there were some of us who had more experience and some of us who had less. And being able to all be in a room together and to all get value from it was really, really cool. And so I feel like
you guys did such good
work. That must be hard.
Like you were a very motivated group. And honestly, the called out part for anyone listening is because most of them do not give themselves credit, including the people listening probably, for all the hard work. And I think that's so important because it's so hard to know where you're going if you don't give yourself credit for where you've been. Man, especially you've done so many things, and you in 2 years, it felt like, having talked to you on a sales call, it felt like you had lived 9 business lives. In 2 years. And I say that with like all of the sort of congratulations behind that is warranted, because most people don't try things the way you did. Like you're really a fast action taker. Kate, I spoke with Katie the other day. She's very similar. And it's sort of like those are the people that get the best results because they're like willing to just try it and see. And they just fly as you did. So it was such an honor to have you with me. Thank you so much for chatting.
Thanks for all your help.
If you're ready to attract dream clients, confidently price your services, and master marketing and sales to drive consistent, high-ticket results, the Income Accelerator may be your next step. With weekly one-to-one coaching, personalized business plan feedback, and group calls, this program offers unmatched support, but spots are limited to just 8. They fill up fast, so even if you're just curious, head to the show notes, apply, and let's talk. Here's the best part. If you apply by February 14th, you'll get a free strategy call to set you up for your best year yet and help you get the most out of the program. Do not wait. Your 6-figure business is way closer than you think, and I would love to help you make it happen. Thank you so much for hanging out with me. it turns out that social proof is actually pretty important. So if you could help me out, I'd so appreciate it. If you just had a quick free moment and could leave me a rating or review on the podcast app, that would be killer. And even better, if you wanted to share this episode on Instagram and tag me, that would totally make my day. And it would bring so much more awareness to the podcast and would help other stylists just like you who are looking to build lucrative styling business, because the better each of us does, the better all of us do. Thanks for hanging out with me, and I'll chat with you next time.